Serious, what is the quickest way you've witnessed someone destroy their life? An old vet used to work at the local small town supermarket to hurt people for the littlest things. Even accused a co-worker of being a traitor to the country because the American flags printed on the wrapping of ground beef rolls were not turned all the way up. Eventually he snapped about something and punched a hole in the wall of the manager's office and threatened to shoot up the whole store. Obviously he was fired. No idea what happened to him, but in the 4 years he hasn't worked there, he never made good on his threat, thank Allah. Cocaine. My grandparents and an extremely successful roofing business. They lost everything they owned shortly after because they got hooked on cocaine. My mum was able to cover their house payments for a few months and tried to get them to go to rehab. They refused. They now live in an awful small apartment and my grandpa will never be able to retire because they have no money. Listening to my mum tell the story of them go downhill is heartbreaking. You can see the pain in her eyes. Praying for anyone that has dealt with this or is currently dealing with it. Guy I went to high school with was big into racing motorcycles. Mind you, the illegal street racing type. He just got a new bike. Turbo Busa. The typical racer bro bike at the time. First day with the bike back from the shop that built it. Within an hour of having it he made a pull just out of town. Minivan pulled out a driveway, hit the back of it doing almost 200 miles per hour. Hit it so hard the minivan pancaked. Back axle pressed up to the front axle. He turned into mist. Responders told the story. At the biggest part of him they've found was tennis ball sized. Alcohol. Watched a guy's entire life crumble in 20 minutes after being caught drunk at work. This guy's career was his life. No family, friends, social life outside of the job. He was a rock star at the job too. But there was obviously something wrong if he turned to booze. He couldn't handle life without the job. After the entire process and trying to get back failed, he drank himself to death within a few weeks. They found him dead on his living room floor on a police wellness check after none had heard from him for a few weeks. Very sad. Before a party back in high school, some of my friends were discussing plans to buy cocaine and do it for the first time at the party. I expressed some concern, and one of them said to me, "Come on, man. None of us are going to get addicted to cocaine. You have nothing to worry about." Within 5 years, each person in that group that was buying dealt with serious cocaine addiction issues, and not all got clean from it. That party was 10 years ago now, and drugs are one of the main reasons I no longer talk to several of those guys. An ex of mine got way into dumbass white girl spiritualism, dropped $1,000 to go to Peru for an ayahuasca retreat, and came back with the mental capacity of a 13-year-old. We were in our 20s. Some point over the retreat or afterwards, got really into auto cannibalism, to the point where she got her tonsils out and begged the doctor to let her keep them so she could cook them and eat them. This was around the point where I broke up with her, and as far as I know, she's still like that. My Phil, retired homicide detective, liked to ride motorcycles and taught the safety courses. Goes on a ride in town and someone enters his lane and doesn't see him. He's wearing the right equipment but takes a solid hit to the head and breaks his shoulder in the crash. The concussion triggers his dementia, and now 10 years later he'll tell you the same story 3 times into minutes and has the sundown symptoms, something fierce. Super sad to see, and I sold my bike after that. But he was broke and the rent was due. His buddy had a side job for him. "Try this, it's new. Sell some of it and keep the rest. Makes you feel great." It was crack, when no one had yet heard of it. 40 years later, in and out of rehab so many times, he is basically a dead man walking. Heart problems, liver problems, kidney problems, etc. And yet he still goes off the deep end once in a while. Hospitalized yet again as of yesterday. How he is still alive, no one knows. Gambling, even drug addiction, takes years to sap a decent chunk of savings. People lose everything in a single night at casinos. I read this thread on what it's like to work at a casino one time, and the comments were so disturbing. Like, one person talked about the time he saw a middle-aged man just huddled against the wall at 3 a.m. sobbing profusely for like an hour. And apparently it's super common for the housekeepers to find suicides in the rooms at casinos. I knew a young who won a decent amount of money on the lottery and bought a big house before proceeding to spend it all on drugs and girls. When the money dried up, he was presented with a bill for work on the house as well as all the house-associated bills. He took out credit cards to cover some stuff, but interest soon mounted up, and he ended up selling the house to cover it all. He went from having it all to losing it all within the space of a year. Methamphetamine. Very close family member. Been locked up now almost 2 years. Rewind 5 years ago. He owned his home, self-employed, cars, motorbike, cash, savings galore on top of the world. Started using meth. Lost his wife, the house and everything else he ever owned. 20 years of hard work all down the drain. If when he's released he'll probably end up back with his parents. Penniless. No job, no assets. Nothing. Sad to see such waste. My grandfather was flying through the yard on a zero-turn mower and smacked it into a trailer. Now has to walk on crutches and has metal rods in his legs for the rest of his life. Far gone, no one will buy it on account of how much it would take to tear down all the old rusty tin barns from the 50s and replace all the fences, in addition to whatever he'd ask for the house land. I've seen it time and again the same way, refusing to get the mental health care they need because they listen to their own brain and not the people who love and support them. This happens either when they don't seek the help in the first place, or they are on meds or working with a professional and then stop. A mental health crisis can go from functional manageable to catastrophic frighteningly quickly. Watching my closest friend knew him since I was a baby. I graduated top honors in high school and university. Then joined the Navy and became a nuclear machinist. Guy's mom passed away and started smoking meth. He went from all the promise in the world to living in a trashed RV, doing drugs, collecting checks from the government, and now hearing voices. Doing hard drugs can have extreme consequences. Friend of mine was about 19 and inherited a decent amount of money. Not enough to retire, but enough to have a serious jump start. He bought and sold or wrecked 7 cars in a year, after which he married a money-grubbing whore, which finished off the money in about a year or 2. When the money dried up, she left him. Not exactly a ruined life, but certainly squandered a big opportunity. I've never seen someone go downhill so fast as my brother when he got into doing PCP analogs. He went from one of the smartest people I knew to a complete dumpster fire in like 2 months. Spent his life savings, cashed out his 401k, in and out of rehab every few months. I've known heroin addicts and it took them much longer to come crashing down. I've never witnessed something go south so fast. My dad had a crack dealer friend in the 80s. They hung out one day and crack dealer friend had a sale or chop. They went to the chop and it was a homeless guy who looked awful. Crack dealer friend told my dad that the guy was a doctor or dentist about a year earlier. He lost his wife, kids and house because he was curious and wanted to try crack and see what it was like. Guy was fucking Guy B's wife. Guy B walks into the shitty dive bar to confront IA. Guy sucker punches Guy B, who hits the floor and cracks his skull. Guy realizes he done fucked up and makes a run for it, but there are a few dozen witnesses and he ends up doing a few years in state prison. The span of one swing put him in prison and killed his career forever. I have a family member about to inherit a large sum of money. Between 200,000 500k. He's a complete whiskey alcoholic and will do any drug he can get his hands on. He is an employee. Girlfriend makes very little money. They are poor. Rent an apartment they plan to pay for with his incoming cash. I have a very bad feeling about his ability to stay alive after he gets the dollar. My coworker was one of those COVID isn't serious, people are being pussies type of guys. Really nice guy. We were WFH and he went to visit his family for a few days knowing multiple family members had COVID. comes back and one morning posts a message, "Hey, not feeling great, gonna lie down for a bit." And that was the last anyone spoke to him. Was dead 2 days later. My best friend's close friend grabbed his son's new skateboard, who is 8 years old, and went down a Georgian hill, struck a rock, fell on his head, and sustained irreversible brain injury. Years passed before his kindly death. He was unpredictable and violent due to the injuries, so he had to be confined the entire time. Put on a helmet. I saw a whole family go into a downward spiral because of their freaky religion. They refused to save money or allow their adult daughters to get any kind of school or training. They refused healthcare because God already healed us. The surviving 2 members live in abject poverty and still wonder where their health and money from God is. Old guy that ran the warehouse which I now run. He didn't like change and was having a hard time learning the computer system. In his frustration, he had a full-blown meltdown that came very close to becoming violent. But the fact was very clear. We changed the locks the minute he left, and they gave me his job. Best first week ever. Him out because he started to get angry at the dealers because all they could offer him was free night stays at the hotel for playing so much, but he wanted free player at the table slots, and they refused.